With 0.5 approaching at a breakneck snail's pace, the time is fast slowly approaching to choose Horde League starters. In a better position than most of you, I am only stuck between two options. I will however be making this your problem and sharing them both with you. First up, and the contents of today's video, is a prized pain Thorns Ritualist. Now this build is conceptual, as it is centered around the prized pain unique, which is being reworked in 0.5 and does not currently exist in its future state. And also my capture card is broken, and this means that I cannot provide you with an actual showcase of the build. So enjoy whatever footage I did manage to scrounge up, and enjoy the video. Now the first thing an aspiring exile like yourself might want to know is how does it work? So of course this is prized pain Thorns Ritualist, and this means that we will be using the prized pain unique ring. Now this gives you a little bit of strength, a very little bit of flat thorns, and a little bit of your skill cost as life cost. This previously also gave you deal your thorns damage to enemies you stun with melee attacks. Now I tested this mod extremely thoroughly and came to the conclusion, the very scientific conclusion, of this shit is dog shit. So I am really glad to tell you that the rework to this ring is this mod being removed and replaced with a better mod. Now this better mod is a 15 to 25% chance to deal your thorns damage to enemies you hit with melee attacks. Now at a glance this does mean chance-based damage, but you may have noticed that I said that this is a ring, and you may have remembered that the Ritualist Ascendancy exists. Now the Ritualist Ascendancy gets 3 ring slots with 25% increased effect, and this means that with 3 prized pains and an average corruption outcome of 26.6% chance to deal your thorns damage to enemies you hit with melee attacks, you can actually hit 100% chance to deal your thorns damage to enemies you hit with melee attacks. And this means that every attack you do actually dishes out your thorns damage. Now this means that you probably want as much thorns damage as possible and also as much attack speed as possible. Firstly, the thorns damage. Flat thorns damage primarily comes from your rare belt, a rare shield, a rare body armor, 10% of item armor on equipped body armor, so you can actually use brass dome instead of a rare body armor, and scavenged plating, which gives you flat thorns damage for each time that you have broken an enemy's armor in the last I don't know how many seconds, it depends on the modifiers you have in there. And then attack speed primarily comes from the passive tree, accuracy stacking, a good weapon, and unfortunately not playing maces. I'd like to make the setup work with the new Soul's Grit mace because it seems to give a lot of flat thorns damage, and maybe with dual wielded maces we can hit decent enough attack speed on something like Armor Breaker, but that's a little bit too experimental for a League Start build guide like I am putting out to you right now. So this left me with the option of quarterstaves or spears. Now I did some testing with quarterstaves. Whirling Assault is amazing. You can reach insane attack speed and the AoE is insane. I can probably do a lot of damage, but getting resistances with the quarterstaff was a little bit too difficult for my liking, and you do lose out on a lot of flat thorns damage by not having a shield and just generally defenses. So I decided that spears are definitely the way to go. Now as for skills, I've gone with Whirling Slash and Spearfield. Whirling Slash will mostly be your map clear skill, because while it doesn't attack super fast, it does move you while attacking and can get you up to sprint speed with honestly not even that much attack speed investment. It's pretty crazy, so we should be able to just be zooming around the map. And then Spearfield has insane AoE scaling, an insanely massive base AoE, and can multi-hit. So the bigger the boss, the more damage we do. So that will be our vector for single target damage, and it should do a lot of single target damage. And it helps that it's kind of fast too. Now comes the part where I show you all the PoB, and this is the meat and potatoes of the build. Now this build is experimental, so this PoB will likely need a few updates as the League Start goes on, especially if I League Start the build, I will be updating it. Also, GCG have just released the passive tree at time of recording, so I haven't had time to factor in the new passive tree into this build guide, so this might immediately be a little bit outdated, but if it is, I will put out PoB updates as fast as I possibly can to show you any new pathing on the tree. But also, I trust you, you're intelligent. Now, unfortunately, something about Thorns is that you can only switch to Thorns at level 16, and you can only switch to Prized Pain at level 48 because of essential, unique level requirements, and that means that for Act 1 at the very least we are going to need an alternating leveling setup. Now I've looked around at the options to level a Huntress with Spear, and the options are truly abysmal in my opinion, and it's honestly one of the things that most makes me want to consider the other build that I am looking at. But I have elected for us to start Act 1 with a Twister setup. Now, for Act 1, I have borrowed Snoobay's Twister setup with a few modifications, and for Act 2 and 3, if you decide to go that far with Twister for any reason, I've gone with That's Real Nito's Twister setup. You can find both of these linked in the notes of the PoB alongside a regex that you can use to search for items in Act 1, just to make your Act 1 a little bit easier. I've also put in trees for Act 1, 2, and 3 for your Twister setup. I will personally almost certainly be switching to Thorns as soon as I hit level 16, but you can actually take Twister all the way to the end game. I recommend seeking out a build guide for you if that is something you plan to do or are considering doing. I've also put in your skill setup for Twister in Act 1, 2, and 3. There's quite a big skill change between Act 1 and Act 2, so make sure you pay attention to that, but basically nothing except support gems changes between Act 2 and Act 3, so that's nice and easy. I've also given you some gear priorities for your Twister setup. I'm not going to run through all of this because it's just too wordy for honestly the part of this build that I really care about the least, so have a look through the PoB yourself to figure it out. What is important that I tell you is your rotation with Twister. It's a very, very complicated combo-heavy build, which kind of sucks and means that you actually have to know rotations for your initial leveling. Now, for all the way from Act 1 to Act 3, you are going to have different rotations depending on whether you're doing clear or bossing. For Act 1, for clear, you'll be doing 3 whirling slashes and then Twister to unleash as many tornadoes as you can. I recommend practicing this. It's actually surprisingly clunky. I struggled a lot on my first test character, but kind of actually dominated Act 1 on my second test character, so just a little bit of figuring out how it works mechanically, I would say is a good idea before League start. Or you can spend time figuring it out while you League start. It's just going to slow you down and maybe frustrate you a little bit, so be aware of that. But anyway, the clear rotation is 3 whirling slashes and then a Twister. You do the whirling slashes to make the Twister give out more projectiles and do more damage. And then against bosses, you're going to use parry into Fangs of Frost and then do your whirling slashes and Twister. This gives you an icy ground underneath the boss, which then your whirling slash will pick up and transfer to your Twister to make it do more cold damage, allowing you to chill and freeze bosses, which will just make your Act 1 a lot easier. Yes, this is a 4-button combo. Yes, it's a pain in the ass, but it does an insane amount of damage. Then for Act 2 to 3, your setup will change quite a bit. You will no longer need parry and Fangs of Frost because you can use ice-tipped arrows and barrage to get enough Twisters and ice damage to not really need the clunk that those add. So in Act 2 to 3, your clear combo will be ice-tipped arrows into barrage into Twister. This will do a nice chunk of damage to enemies around you. The ice-tipped arrows will drop some ice crystals. The barrage will give you extra Twisters. This is why you don't need the whirling slash. You can still work in the whirling slash, especially in early Act 2, just to increase your damage a little bit. Play it by ear. If you don't think you need the damage, skip the whirling slash. If you do think you need the damage and projectiles, put in the whirling slash. I know you can figure this out. I believe in you. And then for your boss rotation, you are going to do the whirling slashes. You're going to start with 3 whirling slashes, then you're going to use ice-tipped arrows into barrage to give you those ice crystals and those extra Twisters. Then you are going to Twister onto the boss, and then on your weapon swap, you're going to have a talisman. And I recommend using the cheapest talisman you can because you do not care about the stats on it, but you can use Ferocious Roar to get up to maximum range, and then Pounce to apply a freezing mark to enemies to allow you to freeze them quicker. This will just increase your boss DPS and also increase your boss survivability and should make things quite comfy. That is your Twister. If you wanted a better explanation of Twister, go look at another build guide creator. I'm here for Thorns. We are just using Twister to get to where we can play Thorns. Now, where we can play Thorns for the first time is level 16, as this is the level requirement of Crown of the Pale King. Now, later in the game, once we have our prized pains, we won't actually want a Crown of the Pale King, but seeing as I really don't want to play Twister, I'm going to be wanting to switch to a Crown of the Pale King Classic Thorns setup as early as possible. Now, the level requirement on Crown of the Pale King is level 16, so you cannot switch before that. You cannot kill Geonor with a Crown Thorn setup or with any Thorn setup at all unless you want your leveling process to be extremely clunky. And you'll also need at least 1 tier 3 or higher support gem so you can cut a Barbs for yourself. This is very important. You can get 2 as well to get Quill Burst to have even better clear. But you must have that 1 support gem to get Barbs. It's worth noting that by the time the speedrunners get to the end game, they start amassing an insane amount of tier 5 support gems, which can quickly drive the price of tier 5 support gems lower than tier 3 support gems. and you can cut lower tier gems from tier 5 gems. So look at tier 5 or tier 3. If they're the same price, get tier 5. If tier 5 is cheaper, get tier 5. If tier 3 is more expensive, look at your budget, figure out what you want to do, but just remember that you can get tier 5 support gems off of trade. Now for the Crown Thorn setup, I've been a bit more thorough than I've been for the Twister setup. I have here your first possible tree when you switch to Crown Thorns. The most important thing is that you get Vengeance as soon as possible. Obviously with Thorns, especially a Crown setup, you want to get hit to deal damage, so you need a source of recovery. I know Leech is getting gutted, but the Leech nerf should only cause a problem once you're deep into the end game. So at this point, at level 19 is as soon as we can get it, Vengeance is just going to be ridiculously huge for your survival. From there, with the Crown Thorn setup, you're just going to head to get as much Thorns damage as possible. So we head straight to Thornhide to get crit chance, and as well as Vulgar Methods also to get crit chance. Now, what's quite nice about this is when we switch to Prized Pain, we will keep most of this pathing and most of these nodes. So we're not going to have to do a major respec later because they do scale off of the same thing, which makes the Crown Thorn setup a very, very comfortable and nice interim setup. This is where I recommend you swap to Thorns. You'll see here I've got earliest swap and I've got recommended swap. Well, I will likely switch to Crown Thorns around level 17, 18, 19 when I can get Vengeance, when I can get a Crown of the Pale King. It is a little bit awkward to start off with. You also might not have the currency for that. However, around level 31 that I have here, this is just before you fight Jaman-Ra. This is where I like to switch to Thorns the most. It means that you don't have to do Trial of the Sekhmet with Thorns. You can do it with Twister, which is a much better at Trials of the Sekhmet. But it also means you have Thorns for Jaman-Ra's fight. Jaman-Ra's fight, I hear a lot of people saying, is really difficult. I have fought that boss more times on Thorns than any other build, so in my brain it's super fucking easy because holy shit, that boss gets absolutely deleted by Thorns. So level 31 is when I recommend you switch to Thorns. You can still switch to Thorns later if you're enjoying Twister, but this is my recommended Thorn swap. Then with the level 44 tree, again, we're pathing towards just more Thorns damage, and this is still pathing that is going to stick around when you switch to Prized Pain, so you won't have to worry about a respec later. And this gets you stuff like Revenge, which gets you extra Thorns damage from the item armor and your body armor, as well as increased Thorns damage if you've blocked recently, which will just increase your damage a lot. Now, this is a round where I recommend you first switch to Prized Pain, as you can equip those rings at level 48, and they should be reasonably cheap, but you can keep going with the Crown Thorns, especially if you don't have budget. The Prized Pain setup might actually be kind of expensive, because 3 unique rings will make resistances really hard, so you can keep going with Crown Thorns. Here, there's a little bit of a respec. It's still not too far off of what you'll be doing with Prized Pain, but just do be aware you might need extra gold to switch to Prized Pain at this point, because if we compare the level 57 Crown tree to the level 64 Prized Pain tree, you can see that the pathing is reasonably substantially different. So that's why I recommend switching to Prized Pain at level 48 when you can initially equip the rings. But if you don't have the budget, you can keep going with Crown Thorns for as long as you want. Ritualist has been a strong generic Thorns Ascendancy since 0.2, so this option is quite strong and can drive you pretty deep into the end game. We're uncertain with the Leech nerfs how far into the end game it can pull you, but it can definitely pull you far enough to have a nice time. Now with the level 57 point, with the respec, we are respecing because we're actually starting to get some passive points along this line here. Most importantly, Val Pact. What it says here is not what it'll do in the patch. I will overlay what it'll do in the patch in the video of editing Lily. Thank you very much. But essentially, it will give you overleech at the cost of not being able to recover from any other sources of life recovery. So this means no life flasks, but it does mean you will leech life more consistently and just be a little bit safer. And essentially, overleech is just a little extra health pool to any multi-hits. It won't protect you from one-shots, but one-shots aren't what we're most scared of when we have to get hit to survive. Then over here, we're just taking some increased maximum life and stun threshold just to, again, give us more survival, and a little bit of extra Thorns damage over here just to increase our damage and help us get through the campaign. Please note, do not take spiked armor. Spiked armor is terrible. Thorns damage is not too affected by armor, and also we intend to armor break with Thorns anyway. As we get deeper into the Crown Thorns, you can see that I start basically just taking defensive nodes. We take some 30% increased armor here. We take some armor applies to elemental damage here. We take goring and fast metabolism. Again, these have also changed in the patch, but they're just damage and defenses while leeching, which is very, very nice. So we are keeping those. And we do also take battle fever for some skill speed and extra damage. damage, as well as Tribal Fury to increase our clear. And then you get to the Thorns endgame where you just start taking up some block stuff. At this point, you'll be playing Crown Thorns into level 84, so I kind of hope you would have switched to Prized Pain by now, as this is not a regular Thorns setup that I'm trying to market here and advertise, but I have kind of given you your entire Thorns character progression. If you do want to stick with Crown Thorns, you can do that all the way into the endgame with this guide, and it should be decent and strong. Once you get to maps, if you are still playing Crown Thorns, you might want to make some defensive changes because we don't know how good Leech is in the new patch. As for Ascending, this is going to be the same on Prized Pain and Crown Thorns, so I'm just going to show you now. The first and most important thing is you're going to want that +1 ring slot. This is the strongest thing that Ritualist offers. It's kind of insane, and then for your second Ascendancy, you're just going to want to get 25% increased effect from this extra ring and your amulet, because it's just insane. Again, you're going to keep this to Prized Pain. This is what makes the Prized Pain setup actually work. For your next Ascendancy, I recommend getting Wildwood Persistence. Recovery is really important for Thorns, and it's just generally a really good node. We take this on Prized Pain and Crown Thorns. And then for your last Ascendancy, I wasn't actually entirely sure what to do with this because nothing's amazing here. Like, you can get Charm Charges, that's pretty good. You can get Baby Headhunter, that's kind of good. I choose to go with Blood Boils because it'll just increase your clear and damage a little bit, and I like that. But here you can kind of just take your pick of what you think is nice. On a previous character that I've played, I've taken the 15% increase to physical damage and the 3% increased movement speed instead of taking a large notable here. So play around, do as you please. This is probably what I'm going to do. The most important thing, though, is just getting Mystic Attunement and Wildwood Persistence. This will make you a lot stronger. As for getting Unfold Finger, go for the reduced mana. We don't care about mana with the setup. We very much do care about Spirit and Elemental resistances. These are not all built the same. Continuing on showing you the Crown Thorns setup, this is going to be your skill setup for Crown Thorns. Your main source of damage is going to be Rapid Assault. It is very, very, very important that you get Barbs and Crowburst in here. These are both tier 3 support gems, or tier 5 if you get the higher version of Barbs. And this is going to be your source of damage. This is what allows your Rapid Assault to apply Thorns damage. So you have to get hit. This will give you stacks for Barbs and Quillburst, which then on your future attacks will deal your Thorns damage on hit. With Barbs 2, it's your next 6 hits after getting hit. With Quillburst, it's your next 3 hits after you retaliate. Apply Thorns in an area around the mob. It doesn't actually apply to the mob you hit, but this gives you a little bit of clear. So it's very, very important that you get Barbs and Quillburst and Rapid Assault. It is also very, very important that you leave Rapid Assault at level 5. Leveling up your Rapid Assault only makes it require more dexterity and cost you more mana. So that is just a waste of a time and just going to hurt you. Later on, when you get your Jeweler's Orbs and you start having more slots in your Rapid Assault, you want Rapid Attacks and Culling Strike. Culling Strike doesn't really do that much, but we don't really desperately need support gems in Rapid Assault because, again, the most important thing is Barbs and Quillburst. Rapid Attacks 3 is also very nice just to dish out those Barbs and Quillburst stacks a little bit faster. We don't care about supported skills deal 50% less damage because that does not affect your Barbs and your Quillburst damage. It only affects your Rapid Assault damage, and Rapid Assault at level 5 is doing fuck all damage. The next skill we use is Cull of the Weak. Some people prefer Rake. This is just your movement skill, especially with Cull of the Weak being buffed. I prefer Cull of the Weak. I preferred it before Cull of the Weak got buffed, but the way Cull of the Weak is getting buffed is very helpful to us. Again, here you're just going to want Barbs and Quillburst and Rapid Attacks, and then Ancestral Call is also very nice just to make you get a little bit more AoE from that Cull of the Weak and apply your Barb stack faster. Next up, and I'm actually going to change the order of these, is Resonating Shield. Now, for Thorns, it is very important that you regularly break enemy armor. Not because you need their armor to be broken so that you bypass it because you're dealing physical damage. No, you are breaking their armor so that you can get Scavenged Plating stacks. Scavenged Plating gives you Thorns damage per Scavenged Plating, and you get stacks of Scavenged Plating from breaking enemy armor. This will give you a ton of damage, and this will give you a ton of armor, and this will just improve your defenses and your damage an insane amount. So we use Resonating Shield to reliably break enemy armor. It's my preferred way to break armor. It breaks the armor extremely quickly, and you block while you're at it, so that's great. We also have Rapid Attacks and Armor Demolisher in here to make you break that armor extra quickly. Quillburst just gives you some AoE damage while you're doing it, applying your Thorns damage to the enemies around you. And Steadfast 2 just makes you less likely to get stunned while you're doing this, and all of this in service of Scavenged Plating and getting those Scavenged Plating stacks. Your final active skill for the Crown Thorn setup is going to be Spear Stab with Exploit Weakness. I like to socket Bob's 3 in here as well, just to get a little bit of free extra damage, but the important part here is exploit weakness. Against bosses, you're going to want to consume the armor break that you just broke with Resonating Shield, so that you can break armor again to apply Scavenge Plating again, because Scavenge Plating doesn't last forever and will run out before the armor break on the enemy runs out. So that's why I run Spear Stab with exploit weakness to remove that armor break, so you can break it again to keep your Scavenge Plating up. And then finally on the Crown Thorn setup, I like to take Magma Barrier when you have extra spirit. It's much more important that you get the Thornskin support gem, but if you get an insane body armor or amulet that has a bunch of spirit on it, Magma Barrier is your spirit fodder skill, and you can stick a second Thornskin in here. Just note, you can only have one Thornskin 2 and one Thornskin 1. You can't have two of the same tier, but you can stick a Thornskin in here just to get more damage if you have the spirit. Now, in the campaign, you're only going to have spirit for Scavenge Plating and Thornskin, but this is important to note. And then finally, in the PoB, I have also got your Crown Thorns gear priority. It's important to note with the spear, your most important thing is keeping the attribute requirements low. The only modifier on an as-dropped spear that you care about at all is attack speed, but you also don't even need this. It's just nice to have. So what I recommend you do when you're playing Crown Thorns is go to Renly in Act 1 and buy whatever bullshit terrible spear he has on offer, because that is going to be your best in slot spear for Crown Thorns, because we just don't want to have to invest in dexterity. We want to keep our dexterity requirements low. The most important part of your gear once you switch to Crown Thorns is going to be, of course, the Crown of the Pale King itself. This allows you to retaliate against all hits instead of just melee attacks. This will make it so that you can retaliate with thorns much more reliably and therefore have barb stacks much more reliably. This is must have for your early Thorns progression, but can be dropped later when you get Prized Pain. But without Prized Pain, you have to have Crown of the Pale King to be able to do any damage at all with Thorns. And then your boots are also quite important. These are Briar Patch. They give you Thorns critical hit chance. This gives you an insane amount of damage and makes it insanely easy to crit cap, so you want to get a pair of these as early as possible as well. These are going to be your biggest currency sinks in the campaign, because you want to buy both of these. By late day 1, by day 2 especially, these will be down to 1 exalt. You don't need good rolls, you just need whatever you can get. These are not going to break the bank, but it is important that you at least have them. The next most important slot for a Crown Thorn setup, and this is also important for your Prized Pain Thorn setup, I copied more or less the exact same items for the Crown Thorns gear priority as I did for the Prized Pain Thorns gear priority, because they scale very similarly. But the next most important things is going to be your shield, your body armor, and your belt. To approach these one at a time, the most important thing you want on your shield is Thorns damage, because this is your source of Thorns damage, much like most melee builds want you to get physical damage on your weapon. This build wants you to get Thorns damage on your shield, body armor, and belt. I have put in the notes the level brackets at which you get access to higher brackets of Thorns damage. You get access to it at 15, 30, 38, 50, and 59. Your Thorns damage will almost double at each of these brackets, so it is really important that as soon as you hit level 50, you go to a vendor, you get yourself a new shield. It is very important that as soon as you hit level 59, you go to a vendor, you get yourself a new shield. Same for belt, same for body armor. Your lower priorities on your shield, on every item, you just want resistances, life, and armor. This is what you will want most on your gloves. Resistance, life, and armor. This is what you'll want most on your amulet, resistance and life, on your rings, resistance and life. And even on your body armor, you'll want resistance and life. But you'll also, very importantly, want Thorns damage, as this is another one of your Thorns damage slots. Alongside on your belt, you also very importantly want Thorns damage. Remember the notes: get a new body armor as soon as you hit level 59, get a new belt as soon as you hit level 50. All of that jazz is really important, but on your body armor, things get more interesting, and this is where you might want to invest some crafting resources even during the campaign, because armor on equipped body armor gives you Thorns. We can come take a look here at the Revenge notable. Gain physical Thorns damage equal to 10% of item armor on equipped body armor. So if you get a body armor with 1,000 armor, that is giving you 100 flat physical Thorns damage, and this can very, very quickly and easily outscale the power of just flat Thorns damage on these items. So make sure to get a high armor roll on your body armor, and then resistances and life are going to be your filler stats, because this is really important. Belt, again, Thorns damage, top priority. Armor is nice to have, resistance is nice to have, life is nice to have. On your rings, this is where you're getting resistance capped. Make sure to be at 75% all resistances at all times. You need to get hit to deal damage, which means if you are not res capped, you will be dying. And then also get life, just to make yourself a little bit tankier. Your amulet and your rings are your main sources of survive, and because you're playing Ritualist, you can get a lot of resistances and life off of these items. Now, we finally get to Prized Pain. Now, the earliest that you can swap to Prized Pain is level 48. You will have to buy this ring. It is a unique ring. You will need 3 copies of it, and if you can, get corrupted copies with a 26.6% or higher corruption roll. The closer you can get to 100% chance to apply Thorns damage on attacks, the earlier you can get that, and the closer you can get that, the more damage you're going to do, and the more progression that you are going to get. Again, 26.6% is the average roll you need across all of your rings to get 100% chance to apply Thorns on attacks. So this is the most important part of your Prized Pain switch. You're still going to want to keep your Briar Patch boots from when you were playing Crown Thorns, but you don't need Crown of the Pale King anymore. It's worth noting that you are losing all 3 of your ring slots to unique rings that have no resistances. So you're going to want to replace your helmet with a rare helmet as early as possible to fix the resistances that you are going to be losing with this switch up. All the rest of your gear is more or less the same. The only important thing to note is that you want actually a decent spear now. It is worth the dexterity requirement to get a higher level spear. You only care about attack speed and accuracy rating, and the only reason you care about an accuracy rating is because it gives you attack speed up to 8,000 accuracy rating, because later on in the leveling process we are going to take Falcon Dive, which can give you 20% increased attack speed from accuracy rating if you have up to 8,000 accuracy rating. So your spear just wants attack speed and accuracy rating. Basically, you can just look at the attacks per second number, grab whatever has the highest attack per second, and then also slap some accuracy rating on that, and then you'll be happy. You'll be a happy little camper. I'm not going to cover the gear for the early Prized Pain setup again, because it is more or less identical to your Thorns setup, because it scales the same way. You want Thorns damage on your body armor, shield, and belt. You want to upgrade it at the levels that I said here, and that's all you really need to know about that. As for the tree with Prized Pain, this is going to be your initial tree when you switch at level 48. You're going to more or less be staying exactly the same as your level 44 Crown Thorn setup, but when you switch at level 48, you're going to grab Blurred Motion for attack speed and increased dexterity. This will help you hit your dexterity requirements quite tastily, but more importantly, this will give you a lot of increased attack speed, which will make the leveling process much smoother. You're going to keep Vulgar Ethics and Barbaric Strength because you are still scaling off of crit using Briar Patch. You're going to keep Thornhide for the same reason. You're going to keep Retaliation because you're still blocking, and you're going to keep Revenge because you still have a high armor, body armor, and you're going to keep Vengeance because you are still recovering off of Leech. Now, recovery is going to be less important on the setup because you don't actually have to get hit to deal damage. You can deal damage without getting hit, but you still want some form of recovery, and even with the Leech nerfs, we can't ignore how strong Vengeance is for Thorns. It's just such a free source of recovery. And then you're going to want to start pathing up here. And the reason you want to start pathing up here is because of all the attack speed nodes here. Here you can get 6% increased attack speed with some accuracy rating. Here you can get 1% increased attack speed per 25 dexterity, and at this point you have 103 dexterity most likely just from the tree, so this is going to give you a nice little bit of attack speed. And you're also going to go over here for more accuracy rating and more attack speed. And you might notice as we switch to the next setup, the trend continues. We switch over to our starting tree to, instead of getting movement speed, to get more attack speed and more accuracy rating as we grab Falcon Dive, which gives you attack speed per accuracy rating. On the way to Falcon Dive, we can also grab Acceleration, because who doesn't love movement speed, and 10% increased skill speed is a lot. This side of the tree, nothing changes except that you grab Blood Rush because, again, more skill speed is more damage. You just want to go as fast as possible. I said this earlier in the video, Whirling Slash moves you as you use it. So as you get more attack speed, you start moving faster and faster. It's at this point in my testing where you'll start going about the same speed as sprinting as long as you have a decent spear. And you can soon actually overtake sprint speed. Because as we go here, we get a little bit of a respec to grab this attack speed node as well, Sand in the Eyes. It doesn't give a lot of attack speed, and the blind stuff does basically nothing to us because we don't have evasion rating, but this will just make you attack even faster and do even more damage. You can also get Val Pact. I explained earlier that this is changing. This is going to give you Overleech and more effective leech, but remove other sources of recovery. Take at your discretion. I think this is going to be good. I think we're going to want this, but we're going to have to fiddle around and find out. So try with and without Volpact, see what you prefer. This is part of what's going to need a lot of testing as the patch comes out. And then finally, as we go into our uber endgame prize pain setup, this is where I actually have bothered with filling out the dual sockets. You're going to want to actually straighten out this pathing over here because you are going to want to get yourself an Undying Hate in tribute to Amannamu. The numbers don't matter, it just has to be in tribute to Amannamu. This is going to transform Resolute Technique into Sacrifice of Flesh, which essentially just gives you 20% less damage taken, which is an insanely strong defensive layer. This is what your passive tree is going to look like for the Prized Pain setup. It's quite a nice progression without too many respecs. It's nice and comfortable. You shouldn't need to throw away your gold at respecializing too much. Obviously, you change from this inner ring to the outer ring as time goes by, but that's not too important. That is something you can spend your gold on as you get it, and it's not like the end of the world if you don't have it. So don't worry too much about that. As for your skills in your prize pain setup, I have got two versions of the skills here. We've got the high budget setup and the low budget setup. I'm only going to show you the low budget setup right now because the high budget setup might have already changed by the time any of you, even the fastest of you, get there. The important things to know are Spearfield. This is going to be your main source of damage. You just want to be attacking as fast as possible to apply your Thorns damage through Prize Pain as fast as possible. So rapid attacks, really important in Spearfield. This is just going to make you do damage faster. Heightened accuracy, just going to give you more accuracy rating. And like I said, up to 8,000 of your accuracy rating applies to attack speed. So that's very nice. Magnified area, this is going to give you more spears, this is going to give you more overlap, and this is also just going to give you a wider area of clear. And the last thing I have in Spearfield here is Quill Burst. Now, without a Crown of the Pale King, you are going to get Quill Burst stacks much, much slower. So this is completely unnecessary. This is just here because I didn't know what else to put in here, and it's just going to give you like 1% better clear. We really don't have a lot of support gems that help us much. You can get Rigward's Ferocity if you get some money, but there isn't a million things that help 1,000,000%. Because all you really need is a Spearfield that attacks as fast as possible and as big of an area as possible. Whirling Slash, more or less the same concept. You're going rapid attacks and heightened accuracy to get as much attack speed as possible, because that is all that you truly care about. Remember, attack speed in Whirling Slash is both movement speed and damage. And Magnified Area, Whirling Slash's AoE is ridiculously tiny, so even with Magnified Area, you're not getting a massive amount of coverage. But it is just going to improve your coverage enough to make life comfortable. And then Whirling Slash is a strike, so you can put Bobs and Quill Burst in here. That's going to increase your damage a little bit. But same as Spearfield, you don't have a Crown of the Pale King at this point, so these aren't going to be doing that much. They're not going to have stacks up very often, if at all, so you can take or leave these. They are completely unimportant. I just, again, didn't know what else to put in here. And then Resonating Shield, it's in here for the same reason as it's in your Crown Thorns. Scavenge Plating is still a massively strong source of damage for a Prized Pain Thorn setup. It's one of the strongest sources of flat damage for a Thorns build and also gives you an insane amount of armor. You're going to use Resonating Shield to break armor to just keep Scavenge Plating up as much as possible. There's a little buff in the top left corner. You can keep an eye for that and make sure you have Scavenge Plating stacks. And then for our second Spirit skill, which is actually quite important for this build, we're going to go with Wind Dancer. And the reason we're going to go with Wind Dancer is because Wind Dancer is a melee attack. I've seen some criticisms of the Prize Pain setup that it isn't a true Thorn setup because it doesn't retaliate. I raise you, Wind Dancer does retaliate. With this setup, it will retaliate every 1.12 seconds in a very large AoE, dealing your Thorns damage to everything around you when just one enemy hits you. I really like that, and I think this should be able to do an insane amount of damage. And also in existing Thorns builds, especially on Shaman, a lot of people like to take Wind Dancer for armor break to have to press Resonating Shield less often. So, of course, we slot in here Armor Break 3 and Armor Demolish. Things do get a little bit fancier in the Uber endgame setup. You can take a look at that yourself. I'm not going to show you right now because I will have put out a new PoB and maybe a build update by the point where anyone is getting to the Uber endgame setup. I also have Uber endgame gear. Same deal. I will have put up an updated PoB and maybe an updated video by the time anyone's getting to this. And I've covered the progression. The one thing worth noting is that in the Uber endgame prize pain setup, I have got a brass dome. This is very good for both crown thorns and prize pain thorns because you can get an insane amount of armor on a brass dome. This shows 4,326. I think you can actually get more armor than that in game, and brass dome is getting rebalanced a little bit, so the numbers are going to be different. But if you do get 4,326, that is 432 flat physical thorns damage. I'd like you to note that the highest flat physical thorns damage you can get on a body armor is 101 to 220. So this is a massive amount of damage. So you are going to want to get yourself a well-rolled brass dome as soon as you can afford the resistance loss and as soon as you can afford to get a well-corrupted, slightly rare unique. And I will also cover with the Uber endgame your jewel setup. I should probably have given you an order of priority of where you want the jewels in the PoB. I haven't done that. I probably won't do that by the time this video comes out. So I'm just going to tell you about it verbally now. Your first and most important jewel is going to be a Prism of Belief with +3 to level of Scavenged Plating, or +2 or +1 depending on how much things cost. This jewel can be very cheap or very expensive depending on how many people are playing Thorns. It is obviously a very rare jewel, but Thorns is not the most popular build in the game, so it's usually kind of cheap. This is just going to give you more Thorns damage. It's very nice. Your other important jewel is going to be a Heart of the Well. You have two options of good mods here. You have a +3% to Thorns critical hit chance option. This can help you get to 100% crit chance much easier. Or you can gain physical thorns equal to 4 to 6% of item armor on your equipped body armor. You are probably only getting one or the other. If you can get both of them, amazing. You are a baller, you are wealthy, you can do good stuff, but that's going to be expensive. I recommend getting whichever of these two mods is the cheapest, unless you're already at 100% crit, in which case don't get the crit chance mod. I do think 100% crit chance on Thorns might be harder to hit this patch than it was last patch, so you'll probably want the crit chance, but you can take the Gain Physical Thorns mod as well. These are both good. You'll also want an Aminamu Undying Hate as soon as you can get one, because this is just going to make you take less damage. And then when you get to high enough levels, you'll want a From Nothing, because there's just these 3 points here that do quite a lot for you. But that's not really important, because you can get a lot without a From Nothing. And then on your jewel, armor, life leech, thorns. There's nothing really else that you can get from a jewel that's that good. You'll notice that in all of my showing off the PoB, I haven't told you what to do with runes at all. That is because in patch 0.5 we are getting a lot of new runes added to the game. Also the Stag Idol, which used to be a mandatory thorns rune, now does nothing for thorns at all. If in doubt, fill in with greater runes of tithing, but hopefully there will be some new very cool thorn stuff added in the patch. At the very least, we know you'll be able to turn Briar Patch into a rune, which should allow you to get to 100% crit chance easier, but we're gonna have to wait and see what happens there. So rune with care, use your brain, I believe in you. Anyway, I think that's about that for this build guide. I hope I haven't forgotten anything, but thank you for watching. Good luck with your league start, and I will try my very best to get my next build guide up before the patch drops on Thursday. It's going to take me time. I'm going to work really hard. Your spoiler, your little teaser, I've discussed this a lot so people already know, but that is going to be a Thorns martial artist using Hollow Form and Crackling Barrier to mana stack. That's just going to take me some time to cook. I've only filled out the leveling part of the PoB so far, so a lot of work still to be put into that from me. Thank you. Subscribe, like, comment, all that jazz, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for the support, and goodbye.